Silence is the safest course for any man to adopt who distrusts himself. Picture this. You're sitting at a dinner table with friends or family. The conversation flows, but suddenly someone throws a sharp, cutting remark in your direction. Maybe it's cloaked in sarcasm, or maybe it's outright disrespect. Everyone goes quiet. Eyes shift toward you. The room holds its breath. What do? Do you argue? Do you defend yourself? Do you fire back and try to reclaim your dignity through words? Most people would. It's the instinctive reaction, to protect, to prove, to fight for control over the moment. But what if that reaction actually gives your power away? The Stoics saw through this. To them, silence wasn't passivity, it wasn't weakness. It was restraint, it was power. It was a choice made from strength, not submission. And that choice, made in the heat of disrespect or provocation, has the power to do what arguments can't: preserve your peace, elevate your presence, and destabilize those who try to pull you down. This is the paradox of Stoic silence. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, to post, to clap back, the one who remains composed becomes the most powerful person in the room. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and dealt with betrayal, politics, and chaos. Epictetus was born into slavery and still held authority with his words. Seneca navigated the bloody court of Nero, yet all of them taught this same principle: that silence, properly used, could disarm the most dangerous opponents. Why? Because silence reflects control, not of others, but of the self. It tells people you are not available for emotional manipulation, that you don't need validation, that your peace is not up for negotiation. In this video, we're going to explore what the Stoics knew about silence, and how it can become your greatest weapon in a world that thrives on argument, outrage, and ego. You'll learn why most people waste their energy trying to win battles that don't matter. You'll discover how to resist the pull of petty conflicts, and most importantly, you'll understand how to use silence to protect your time, your dignity, and your inner clarity. This isn't about shutting down or walking away from everything. It's about choosing when to speak and knowing when to say nothing at all. Because when you learn the art of Stoic silence, you stop fighting for control and start commanding it without saying a word. Let's begin. 1. Why talking less builds more power. Let silence be your general rule, or say only what is necessary and in few words. Epictetus. To the Stoics, speech wasn't just noise, it was a tool. And like any tool, it had to be used wisely, with care, with purpose, and most of all, with control. Epictetus taught his students to speak only when necessary. Seneca warned that most arguments are traps. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about controlling not just what we say, but why we say it. In Stoic philosophy, every word is a decision, a cost, an action that either builds your inner life or erodes it. Think about it. How much energy have you spent in your life explaining yourself to people who never wanted to understand you in the first place? How many arguments have left you drained, not because you were wrong, but because you were emotionally hijacked? Stoics knew that most speech is reactive, driven by ego, fear, or pride. The need to be right, the fear of being misunderstood, the urge to look clever. These are the enemies of inner peace. When you react verbally to every provocation, you become predictable, easily manipulated. People learn they can pull you off center with just a few words. But when you choose your words with intention, or even better, when you choose to say nothing, you flip the dynamic. You become unshakable. The silence of a Stoic is not the silence of a coward. It's not repression. It's not passivity. It's clarity. It's the refusal to waste breath on anything that doesn't serve your higher self. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." In other words, stop explaining yourself. Live your truth quietly. Let your presence do the speaking. This doesn't mean we should never speak up. Stoics believed in justice. They believed in virtue, but they also believed in timing, in precision, and in speaking from principle, not from impulse. So the next time someone tries to drag you into drama, ask yourself, is this worth responding to, or am I just reacting? Does speaking here serve my values, or just my ego? Will silence protect my peace, or betray it? Use your voice when it matters, but never forget, silence, when chosen with purpose, is one of the sharpest tools a Stoic can wield. 2. The strategy of Stoic restraint. Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? Marcus Aurelius. Most people think winning means proving others wrong. Stoics knew better. They understood that real victory, meaningful, lasting, personal victory, has little to do with defeating others and everything to do with mastering yourself. When someone disrespects you, when someone shouts or mocks or tries to provoke you, your instinct might be to strike back, to reclaim your dignity with words. But the Stoics believed this was a mistake, because when you argue to prove your worth, you've already handed over your power. You're fighting for something you should never have put on the table in the first place, your self-respect. Stoics flipped the script. They didn't argue to win. They didn't respond to bait. They stayed rooted in principle and often said nothing at all. Here's what that looks like in real life. Someone insults you. Instead of defending yourself, you observe their need to offend, and you don't give them your attention. Someone spreads lies about you. Instead of launching a counterattack, you continue living with integrity and let time expose the truth. Someone disagrees with your values. Instead of trying to convince them, you demonstrate your values by how you live, not by how you debate. Why does this work? Because people expect a fight. When you don't give it to them, they're thrown off. Your silence creates space, and in that space, their emotional chaos echoes back at them. Arguing for most people is about control. When you don't argue, you're signaling, I don't need to control you, I'm already in control of me. That is intimidating, not aggressive, but powerful. Seneca said, a quarrel is quickly settled when deserted by one party. There is no battle unless there be two. This doesn't mean you tolerate abuse. It doesn't mean you shrink. It means you reserve your energy for what matters. You walk away not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. Stoic restraint isn't about avoidance, it's about sovereignty. You don't argue for respect, you act in a way that commands it. So how do you win without arguing? Stay silent when words are weapons. Walk away when engagement is a trap. Let your actions outlive the noise. Because the one who remains composed when others lose control wins a deeper, quieter, and more enduring victory. 3. Why stillness threatens the insecure. Silence is a source of great strength. Lao Tzu. Silence isn't just the absence of words. It's the presence of power, a kind of mental and emotional discipline that radiates strength without a single sound. Stoics understood this. They knew that silence unsettles the insecure, not because it's empty, but because it's full of presence, full of depth, full of control. When you remain silent in a moment where others expect noise, when you hold your ground without defending, explaining, or reacting, you create a psychological mirror. And in that mirror, the other person sees themselves clearly, maybe for the first time. This is why silence is so threatening to manipulators, aggressors, or those addicted to control. They feed off reaction. Your silence cuts that supply. Stillness reveals truth. It forces both you and others to confront what's actually there, not what's being performed through argument or over-explanation. In a noisy world where people compete to be heard, the person who speaks less but means more commands the room. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you speak less often, but more intentionally. And when you do, people listen, because your words aren't noise, they're signal. But silence also turns inward. It's not just social, it's spiritual. When you're silent, you begin to notice the chatter inside, the fears, the compulsions, the stories your ego tells you. Silence gives you a front-row seat to your own inner world, and that's where transformation begins. Marcus Aurelius would rise early and reflect in silence before speaking to anyone. Seneca practiced mental rehearsals of difficult events, imagining his reactions in advance. Epictetus reminded his students that external events mean nothing, only our response to them does. Silence is how you access that response with clarity. If you always speak immediately, you're reacting. If you pause, even briefly, you're choosing. And choice is the foundation of freedom. So here's your challenge. Take space before you speak. Ask yourself, does this need to be said? Is now the right time? Am I adding clarity or just noise? Practice not filling silence out of discomfort. Let it hang. Let others sit in it. Let it work. Because in that quiet space, you'll begin to notice a shift. People respecting you more, provoking you less, and most importantly, you respecting yourself more. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you mastered the art of saying just enough and no more. 4. Speak with courage, not ego. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. Epictetus. Silence is powerful, but even silence must be wise. There are moments when staying silent is not Stoic strength, but fear in disguise. Stoicism is not about passivity. It is not about tolerating injustice, hiding your truth, or swallowing pain to maintain a false peace. The Stoics believed in measured speech, not suppressed speech. There are times when you must speak. When someone is being harmed and your voice can protect them. When boundaries are being violated and your silence would invite more abuse. When your truth is burning inside and not speaking, it would poison your own peace. Silence can be discipline, or it can be avoidance. The difference is why you're being silent. Are you silent because you're centered, or because you're scared? Real Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress your voice. It asks you to elevate it. To make sure your speech is driven by virtue, not vengeance, by clarity, not chaos. When Marcus Aurelius journaled his thoughts, it wasn't to keep them hidden. It was to clarify his internal world so that when he did speak, as emperor, as a man, as a leader, his words came from a grounded place. Seneca warned that tolerance has limits, that enduring what must not be endured is not a virtue, but a form of self-harm. And Epictetus reminded us, if something is unjust, you must speak against it, not to rage, but to realign the world toward reason. Here's the Stoic principle at play. Don't speak from ego. Don't stay silent from fear. Speak from virtue. Speak with intention. So how do you know when to speak? If what you're about to say will uphold your values, speak. If someone's dignity is at stake and you can defend them, speak. If you've reflected and still feel your voice is needed, speak, but never to win, never to dominate, and never just to unload your emotional chaos onto others. Speak as a builder, not a destroyer, because silence is not always golden, sometimes it's just yellow. 5. How to defeat them. How much time he saves who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks. Marcus Aurelius, Stoic. Silence isn't easy, and not because silence itself is hard. What's hard is resisting the three enemies that try to shatter your stillness from the inside. Let's meet them. 1. The ego that wants to be heard. This is the part of you that can't stand not having the last word. It interrupts, defends, explains, and demands to be right. It says, they can't talk to me like that. I need to prove my point. If I stay silent, I look weak. But Stoicism teaches us that being strong is not the same as being loud. The loudest person in the room is usually the least in control of themselves. When your ego demands to be heard, pause. Ask, Is this about truth or just image? Then choose to respond, not react. 2. The insecurity that fears judgment. This enemy makes you over-explain everything. It makes you post online just to prove you're doing okay. It makes you fill silences in conversations just so people don't think you're awkward. Insecurity whispers, "They'll think I'm dumb. I should say something, anything. I'll lose respect if I don't defend myself." But silence is often the most respect-commanding choice you can make, not because you're hiding, but because you're anchored. You know your worth. You don't beg others to validate it. To defeat this enemy, remind yourself, I don't owe anyone an explanation for my existence. 3. The anxiety that hates stillness. This one's sneaky. It's not about pride or people. It's about discomfort. The moment things get quiet, this enemy panics. It rushes to fill the void with anything: noise, distractions, words, worry. Because in silence, we have to face ourselves, and many would rather drown in noise than sit with their own thoughts. But this is where real Stoic training begins. You have to learn to sit with silence, not as a punishment, but as a path to clarity. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And it's true. Most of what you fear in silence isn't real. It's a projection, a ghost. To defeat this enemy, practice sitting in silence daily. Even for just 2 minutes. Let the storm pass. Let your breath anchor you. 6. The daily practice of Stoic calm. Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems. Epictetus. You don't become calm by accident. Stoic silence, the kind that grounds you when life is chaotic, is built through practice. Deliberate, intentional, daily practice. Here are 5 ways to train your inner silence every single day. 1. Start your day in stillness. Before the world speaks to you, speak to yourself. Marcus Aurelius began each morning by reminding himself of the challenges he'd face: rudeness, unfairness, ego, but also that none of these things could rob him of his peace unless he allowed them to. Even 5 minutes of silence in the morning, no phone, no noise, just breath and awareness, can center you more than any motivational video ever will. Start here. Sit upright. Close your eyes. Inhale slowly through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Let your mind settle. Watch your thoughts without grabbing them. You don't need to control your thoughts. Just stop being controlled by them. 2. Respond. Later, not sooner. Next time someone angers or challenges you, don't respond instantly. Don't feed the fire. Instead, delay your reaction. A delayed response is a trained response. Epictetus taught that between the stimulus and your reaction, there's a choice, and if you can master that space, you master yourself. Practice this. Someone says something offensive? Pause. You receive criticism? Reflect. You're feeling emotional? Breathe. Then speak, not to react, but to respond. 3. Create micro moments of silence. You don't need a monastery to train Stoic calm. Your life is full of hidden opportunities. Try this. Before a meeting, take 3 deep breaths. In the middle of stress, step away for 60 seconds. While waiting in line, notice your posture, your breath, your thoughts. These micro moments of stillness rewire your nervous system. They tell your brain, I am safe, I am in control. 4. Journal for clarity, not complaints. The Stoics didn't journal to vent, they journaled to clarify. Marcus Aurelius wrote every night not to complain, but to confront his mind, to ask, where did I lose my peace today? Where did I act from ego? How can I return to reason tomorrow? Use this at night. What disturbed my silence today? Did I speak when silence would have been wiser? Where did I keep peace by not reacting? This is how silence becomes wisdom. 5. End your day with detachment. The day is done. You did what you could. Now let go. Seneca said, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." And yet he lived with peace, not because life was easy, but because he practiced letting go. Before bed, forgive the day. Forgive yourself. Return to stillness. Inner silence is not a luxury, it's a responsibility. A muscle that must be trained, protected, and honored, especially in a world that profits from your noise. 7. Protecting your mind in the age of noise. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Let's be honest. We don't live in ancient Rome. We live in a world of alerts, scrolling, ads, opinions, outrage, and noise. Constant, overwhelming noise. The average person today is bombarded with over 10,000 messages per day. Notifications, emails, texts, headlines, and distractions that didn't even exist for Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus. So the modern Stoic has a new challenge. How do you stay silent inside when the outside world never stops screaming? Here's how the Stoic mindset applies right now, in 2025, in the real world. 1. Silence is rebellion. In an age where everyone is reacting, commenting, and performing, choosing not to react is a quiet act of rebellion. Every time you resist the urge to argue in a comment section, every time you log off instead of scrolling one more time, every time you choose a walk in silence instead of more stimulation, you are reclaiming power over your mind. That is modern Stoicism, not quoting it, living it. 2. Guard your input. Like a philosopher, what you consume is what you become. Seneca would warn today, if you feed your mind constant conflict, gossip, and mindless entertainment, don't be surprised when your mind becomes restless, anxious, and empty. Stoic silence starts with curating your inputs. That means unfollowing accounts that make you feel less than, turning off news cycles that only provoke fear, choosing intentional content that uplifts, educates, or brings clarity. You become what you let into your mind. 3. Master the art of not needing to comment. You don't need to have an opinion on everything. You don't need to correct every mistake. You don't need to weigh in on every trending issue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control." That advice is more relevant now than ever. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to react to everyone who's wrong on the internet. You can simply not respond. And in that moment, you preserve your peace. 4. Build a philosophy, not a performance. Don't practice Stoicism so people think you're wise. Practice it so you can stay calm, even when nobody's watching. Silence in the modern world is not withdrawal, it's mastery. It's choosing not to get sucked into debates that drain you. It's choosing not to respond to passive-aggressive comments. It's choosing not to react when someone tries to provoke you. The Stoic doesn't need the last word, they already have the last piece. 8. Let your silence speak for you. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Epictetus. When all is said and done, Stoic silence is not about saying nothing. It's about saying less, but meaning more. It's about acting with quiet strength, not loud insecurity. It's about removing the noise so your soul can finally speak. Let's recap. You learned that true strength doesn't argue, it acts. That silence creates power, not weakness. That the wise choose when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. That peace is preserved by restraint, not by domination. That stillness sharpens your inner voice, so you're no longer tossed by every opinion or provocation. In a world addicted to shouting, the Stoic whispers. In a world obsessed with reacting, the Stoic reflects. In a world of performance, the Stoic lives in truth. You don't need to win arguments anymore. You don't need to prove your worth through noise. You don't need to post, explain, or defend constantly. Your presence will speak. Your decisions will speak. Your silence will speak. So the next time you're tempted to fight a battle that drains you, pause, breathe, choose calm. Because sometimes the strongest answer is no answer at all. If this journey meant something to you, write in the comments. Today I choose silence because I know who I am. And remember, the Stoic isn't cold. The Stoic is clear. The Stoic doesn't withdraw. The Stoic directs. And the Stoic doesn't speak to be heard. The Stoic speaks to build. Let your silence build the life you were meant to live. Thank you for walking this path.